Good evening. In our news bulletin for tonight, candidates for the NCEA general elections have been finalized and confirmed. ANZAC commemorations allow time to reflect on the sacrifice of NCEA soldiers who served during war. The release of the NCEA results for 2016 show that NCEA high school students are performing relatively well in comparison to other schools in New Zealand. The status of Whanghau NCEA is at the core of research currently being conducted by a Linguistics university student from Canada. The final list of candidates for the NCEA General Elections 2017 have now been confirmed, with a total of 23 candidates for the common role and 11 village seats are being contested. The Chief Electoral Officer says that there was only one withdrawal from the common role candidates. Last week, at the close of nominations, there were 24 common role candidates and 11 villagers heading for the polls. With the registration of electors also closed this week on Tuesday, there are 1,120 eligible voters. With the close of withdrawal of nominations and the finalized names for the list of candidates, Justice staff can now prepare the ballot papers. Candidates, especially those in the common role, also have the option of securing campaigning slots on television, radio and other mediums to get people to vote for them. The NCEA general elections will be held on Saturday, the 6th of May. There was a somber feeling as people gathered at the National War Memorial in Alofi at dawn on Tuesday morning, in remembrance of those who sacrificed their lives during world wars in the pursuit of peace. ANZAC Day is observed on the 25th of April each year. This is a significant day for NCEA, who has historical links with New Zealand. 150 men enlisted and served as part of the Maori Battalion during World War I. For some villages, they held their own dawn parades and remembrance programs before joining in the national event at the Millennium Hall grounds. NCEA police stood guard during the formal procession with speeches from representatives from the NCEA RSA. The roll call was also presented by descendants of soldiers, reading out each NCEA soldier by name as a mark of respect. New Zealand High Commissioner His Excellency Ross Ardern's speech echoed sentiments of the numerous war stories shared amongst families and the profound sense of loss.
As we continue to mark the anniversary of World War I hope we use the many tools that we now seek out so we can seek out stories such as these. To know our history, and in knowing, we will be the ones that keep the memory alive and learn from the lessons of the past. At this point, 100 years ago, the First World War still had 18 months to run, which, if they could have known it, would have been some comfort to the men in the trenches at the time. And when the war did end, of course, it would have been so deadly for all countries involved, their citizens would not believe that within a generation they would be called to arms again. And the Second World War lasted even longer than the First. It's hard to imagine living with the uncertainty of national survival. But it's not the anticipation of being drawn into another war that brings New Zealanders, Australians and NCEAns to their memorials on ANZAC Day. It is quite the opposite for all of us. It's a sense of gratitude that the wars that our grandparents won have left, for the most part, an enduring peace. But with that gratitude comes a sense of selfless national service, which is sometimes required of all of those who attend a cenotaph on this ANZAC Day, or just give a thought to those who fought and died for their country. And they should resolve that they too, if necessary, would answer the call. I thank you all for your attendance today. I thank you for participating, and I thank you for remembering.
New Zealand has been able to collect a substantial amount of information that is stored within the war records that are readily available and accessible for those who would like to learn more. Premier Sir Tokita Langi also set a challenge for New Zealand to give due recognition for the contributions Niue made to the war efforts.
Ross, this is to you. My challenge to you, the last thing you do for us is to go back and talk to the Ministry of Defence, as well as talk to the Australian counterparts, and tell them Charlie wants the building. Please provide the funds so Charlie can have his building. It is due recognition. It is due recognition for the contribution we have made to the war. I was telling my people here that in New Zealand we were treated like non-citizens when it came to occasions like this. So I said, I don't believe that you have a right to come and say anything here because it's not reciprocated in New Zealand. It wasn't until Olaf Jacobson, in her role as High Commissioner, demanded that she sit at the front as part of the realm of New Zealand, and also for the contribution we made with the soldiers we send overseas. And I thank her for that, and I thank you. Ross, take it back to your people in Wellington and tell them it's time they made a contribution to the Niueans. It is time. I know you've done a lot of things for us, and I appreciate your efforts. But sometimes I think these are individual efforts on your own that you have done to support what you believe to be good for us. And I thank you very much for that. You've done a great deal while you've been here, and I thank you very much for that. You've done a great deal for the ANZACs, and I thank you very much for that. But sir, I want you to go back, and I want you to tell them that it is time that give us physical manifestation of their agreement that Niue also contributed to the war in World War I.
One of the more recent concerns has been that with each new generation that emerge, there is a risk that the enormity and significance of these stories may be lost, and therefore the commemoration of ANZAC each year serves as a reminder. We will remember them. The release of the NCEA results for 2016 show that Niue High School students are performing relatively well in comparison to schools in New Zealand. The National Curriculum Educational Achievement was implemented from New Zealand's curriculum to Niue High School in 2003. Students undertake NCEA once they enter senior school in years 11, 12 and 13. The 2016 results were released via a press release to give an overview and fair measure of how students from Niue High School have performed academically.
The students have been passing very, very well. But what's more pleasing to me as the principal is the fact that more of our students are passing with endorsement and excellent passes as compared to previous years where it seems like achieve was the aim for the students, and as soon as they reach the achievement level, they're quite satisfied with that. But in recent years, that attitude has changed, especially with our top students. The competition is there, which can only be good for their education. We always measure them against New Zealand standards, because at the end of the day, as we all know, most of our students end up going for further studies in New Zealand. At level 1, for 2016, at level 1, our students were slightly below the New Zealand standard. But that could be because of a lot of things. This is the first time that they started on NCEA. Usually what we see, the pattern at Niue High School is when they reach level 2, and they're used to the processes of NCEA and systems, the students usually do very, very well and do, if not, at the same level, if not better than New Zealand averages.
Last year's results show that out of 23 students that took NCEA Level 1, 20 students completed and gained their Level 1 credits. In NCEA Level 2, there were 22 students and they had a pass rate of 100%, and one of the students had also gained university entrance after doing some Level 3 subjects. There were a total of 15 students that were in Year 13 that attempted NCEA Level 3, 12 students completed Level 3, 10 have gained university entrance, and 3 students had gained a Vocational Pathways Award in Creative Industries pathway.
This year, we've also reported the results against vocational pathways. Vocational pathways are TVET type programs where students are put into a learning program based on what they want to do. At the moment, we've got the multi-skill course at the technology department. We are starting that. And it's just looking at other programs that students can do and based on what they want to do when they leave school. We realized that not all students want to go to university. Yes, that's the reason why we've identified the vocational pathways as quite an important part of our education system.
According to Principal Charles Yawane, they will continue to urge and encourage students to do their best and not to just settle for a pass. He said they're very pleased with the seniors' NCEO results from last year. A linguistics student from the University of Toronto is conducting a study on Whanghauaniwe for her final thesis. Linguistics is a discipline that allows the scientific study of languages and how they're structured to understand the features in languages that are either shared or vary, because language can be so diverse. The study will look for features in Whanghauaniwe language structure and the variations in comparison to languages that are broadly spoken. Rebecca Tolan is a linguistics student from Canada who has decided to base her PhD thesis on Whanghauaniwe.
So linguistics is a discipline. It's not generally taught in high schools, it's more at university level, but it's looking at the scientific study of language, so looking at how languages are structured, what structures languages share. One of the very common misconceptions of what linguistics is or what linguists do is that we speak a lot of languages or we just do a lot of translation, and that's not really what it is. So if you're a linguist, you may not necessarily be good at learning a new language or picking a language up, but you understand a lot about Whanghauaniwe, as we were actually discussing at the conference in Mutilau. It's one of languages vary in terms of word order, so a lot of most languages are actually subject, object, verb, SOV. Closely behind that, there are languages like English, which are subject, verb, object. And then there's a more elite group, probably about 10% of the world's languages are verb, subject, object, VSO, and Whanghauaniwe is one of this group. With linguistics, as I was just mentioning, a lot of research is we look at how languages are structured, what properties languages share. But another sort of a very related branch of this, they kind of feed into each other, is how are languages processed. So what we've seen from past research is that when you're listening to a sentence, you don't wait until the end of the sentence to try and start figuring out what it means. You do this incrementally as the sentence unfolds over time. So you try to predict what's coming next.
Whanghauaniwe is amongst languages with some of the fewest fluent speakers, and very little research has been done. This was another reason and a point of interest, as well as the fact that Niue is amongst 10% of languages in the world that uses the verb, subject, object structure. Rebecca has already started conducting research with a random selection sample base of the population using an interactive method.
It's just a task-based study, so there's a picture, a board with 4 corners on it, and there's images, usually of quite cute animals in those corners, and you hear a sentence, so something like Nikisia he nua ka ki e kosi, and you match them up. Sikisia hikuli e nuuli, and you match them up, and then you hear a question. So something like koi manufe nikisia hikuli, and you would pick the right answer. During this, there's a camera that's just measuring eye movements, so it's looking at just which parts of the board you're looking at. So this is a methodology known as eye tracking that is used a lot in studies of processing studies and how languages are understood as they unfold over time. And then there's another little camera that's just measuring placement of pictures on the board, but it's not videoing you yourself, it's just videoing your hands and your placement of cards.
Rebecca will complete her research in Niue on the 9th of May and will spend some time analysing data collected with the hope it will be finalised by early next year. And that concludes our news bulletin for tonight, but we would like to offer our deepest condolences to the families of Niuaviu Tawepihi and Lafetu Sepili for your loss.